Welcome back to New to Medical Device Sales. I am your host, Jacob McLaughlin, and today I have a very special guest, a good friend, Dave Dreas. Dave, thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming. Dave, for you guys listening, just finished his first year with one of the largest medical device companies in the world, which it also is a distributorship that he's working with. So it's great to have that side of the industry, the business on the medical device world that I haven't got to have someone on yet. So fun to have someone new. Before this, Dave owned his own gym, was a fitness model, did a lot of, had skincare, just an entrepreneur.
I feel like I've dabbled into a lot of different things. And now I'm in medical device, and I would probably say my story's pretty unique and kind of a lot of different trial and error. And I'm sure people that listen to this are probably going through some sort of trial and error. And I think listening to other people's stories kind of puts things in perspective and allows you to kind of learn from people's mistakes and things that work so that you can kind of create your own path.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and that's why we're excited to have you, just because you are coming in way different than a lot of the guests we've had. So excited to have you. Just starting off, first, why? What did you do before, and then why medical device sales?
You kind of mentioned it. I owned a gym for 7 years. I sold it in August of 2019. So it was kind of right before, probably 6 months before the pandemic really hit. I didn't know that was going to happen. So
you called it.
It just kind of worked itself out in that regard. There's always, I don't know if it's me making this up in my mind or if this is the stigma of medical device, but it was always one of those where it seemed like it was athletes or people that were more driven, not necessarily athletes, but just competitive individuals would go into it, and then there was an opportunity to make a lot of money. That was kind of like this thing that was in my mind, like, oh, that's how medical device reps make all this money, so on and so forth. I had a couple clients that had some relatives or were very familiar with medical device, so I spoke to a lot of, I've networked through them to speak to some people that were in the field, is the best way of saying it. When someone mentions medical device, like I'm a medical device rep, there's so many different avenues that you can go down. I'm sure, to the listeners here, when you start to look into some things, there's so many different, I'll call them departments, but just different little departments that you could get involved with. So I didn't really have any clue, what department I'd want to go in, so on and so forth. So once I sold the gym, I was still kind of training clients, and I was passively kind of navigating the interview processes with different companies and just trying to get myself out there. I had a handful of different interviews with different companies, different, some were direct, some were distributorships. Some dealt with spine, some dealt with, total joints, some were extremity orthopedics. So there's different avenues that I was going down. I wasn't really in a rush per se, for the first couple months. It took a little while. And then, I had to go through a couple interview processes, and I finally ended up kind of the first part of the year of 2019, getting a job, and now it's been a full year.
I love it, man. That's awesome. And for the listeners, can you tell us kind of the difference between like direct and a distributorship?
I'm trying to think from an easy way of putting it. So I'm 1099. My boss, he essentially, I guess it's really, you're 1099. You're not necessarily, I don't get a car or anything like that. I get a paycheck. I can write a lot of things off on my taxes. My boss, as a team, I guess you could say, we still have numbers and things that we got to meet. I guess maybe the points are a little bit different in some of the negotiations compared to direct. There's not as much corporate-y, I guess you'd say, but there still is obviously that corporate element because we still have a bottom line that we have to hit. But for the most part, it's not much different. The everyday today job, description of what you're supposed to be doing is really relatively the same. Yeah,
and I love that. And the thing I always kind of touch on, correct me if I'm wrong, I would always tell people, especially being a personal trainer, you're 1099, you're your own business. It would be like if someone owned a gym, you work out of that gym, that person owns that business, but you're still making money. And when you make money, you make them money.
Correct.
And still
So I work, without getting into specifics, I work for XYZ company and I sell ABC stuff, if that makes sense. And there's a lot of XYZ companies throughout the United States that sell this ABC stuff. So I get paid from XYZ company not ABC, if
Yep.
that makes any
100%.
sense. So I'm getting paid from the distributorship. So overall, our distributorship covers an area. In that area, I'm just going to throw a random number, but let's just say we got 15 employees. We all have to try to get to X amount of whatever the goal is.
Yep.
You know, we compete with other distributorships throughout the United States. And, you know, that's kind of just how it's set up. Just like you were saying, it's like you have a gym and you have all the trainers underneath you that are training.
Yep.
Your whole goal is to still bring in X amount of dollars at the end of the month to keep the lights on and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. And another thing just to touch on is like the big difference when we talked about it, right? Like you said, 1099. And if you don't know what that means, 1099 means like you're your own business. You're with another business, but you're your own business. So like he said, he's not getting a car. For example, if you're in a corporate lifestyle, you might be getting a car, you might be getting 401k, you might be getting health insurance, all this stuff. That probably doesn't happen as much.
Correct, 100%. That's a very good point that you brought up. So since owning my gym, I've had my own health insurance.
Yep.
You know, so I really just transitioned. It was almost the same thing, my LLC and everything that I had set up. Think of it this way. I'm just going to throw a random arbitrary number, but let's just say I get $5,000 in a paycheck. There's no taxes or anything coming out of that. I have to basically, you know, either put money away for taxes. I'll pay for my own gas. I'll pay for my own insurance, all that kind of stuff. Now, you can write all that stuff up at the end of the year, so your taxable income is going to be lower than what. Yep. So it does have its pros and its cons depending on how you kind of maneuver around it.
Yep.
But at the same time, there's people that don't want to deal with that. People just want to be direct and want to have the car allowance. They want to be able to do all that. I mean, there's many different ways to skin a cat. Just kind of depends on what works for you. And like I said, I was fortunate. You know, when I had my insurance, it's gone up, obviously, over the past 10 years. But at the end of the day, it's still not as much as what some people might be buying insurance now is.
Exactly.
So I'm fortunate in that regard.
And that's awesome. And I also just really like how, if you guys don't know anything about taxes and LLCs, he just gave you some insight. So you look into that. And then also, like what I just tell everyone who asked that question, just like you said, it's what you're comfortable with. Yep. Some people are comfortable with, like, you'll hear a lot of times, eat what you kill, commission, like you're doing it. Or it's like, hey, you can, you know, be in more of a quote unquote safe thing, but also knowing more of the time when it's safe, there's a lot more rules.
So I'll say this, and this isn't for every distributorship, and I'm generalizing, but it's sometimes people can get swayed by saying, hey, I get a company car. Hey, I get a gas card or something, or I get to take docs out and I have a credit card or whatever it is. You know, but then their base pay might be a lot less. Yep. You know, so it just depends. And like I said, there's not a right or wrong way of doing it. Wherever you know, if you're looking for a job and wherever you can get in to get a job, you know, that's kind of the first step if you're needing a job. But, you know, they both have their pros and cons. Both can be beneficial, just the way that it's set up. Yep. So it just kind of depends on what you feel comfortable with.
100%. Yeah. And that's exactly what it is what you're comfortable with. So then kind of telling us, now you decided, hey, I'm going to go to the medical device route. Can you kind of tell us the steps you took to, like you said, you networked, but going in?
It was tough. I'm not going to lie. And I'm sure that, you know, a lot of people experience this, and you probably listened to other podcasts here that you've had where people kind of explain their story, and it takes time. Yep. You know, I wish it would have taken much shorter time, but some companies have, you know, their process is slow. Some company, I mean, I remember, you know, submitting something, you know, from online, having an initial phone call, and then you don't hear anything for 10 days, you know, and you're kind of like, oh, screw it, whatever. And then all of a sudden you get an email or something like, hey, you know, you got to go meet this person. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, they're still interested. Then you go meet this person. It's like, well, hey, we're going to have you go meet this person. You know, because really at the end of the day, when you get into the medical device world, you kind of work in teams. Yeah. And you want to make sure everyone on the same team, you know, I'll just say likes you. You know, you got to get along with people. You got to, you know, there's a lot of times where it can be high stress where, you know, you might have to do something you don't want to do. You know, it's like you got to really make sure everyone can get along. And so you have multiple interviews having to meet all these different people. And then it was like, you didn't hear anything for 10 days. Yep. And it's like, oh, well, you got a final interview. And you're like, oh, okay, you got to meet this person. So I had a couple different companies where I went through a pretty substantial interview process. One of them, I didn't get a job, which in hindsight was a good thing. Yeah. You know, you could go into that. One of them, they hired someone probably, the way that the interview was all set up, like, I had to do an interview that was like a week later. So then once I did it, I was late to the farther, like people were farther ahead of me. So then they're like, oh, well, we already hired someone. I'm like, I'm in the middle of the process.
Yeah.
Like, give me a chance.
Exactly.
You know?
Yep.
So that happened. And then, you know, when I knew someone that was a good friend of mine, was a good friend of his, we connected. And then that's how I got connected with my current boss.
Yep.
And it was much, I guess the distributorship side, it was much easier of an interview than having to go through this whole process. So I interviewed with him, he's my boss, and it was done. So
that's awesome.
So it really worked out well. But it's, you know, a lot of, you know, looking at the websites of companies and applying all to just about everything.
Yep.
And it was tough. Like I'll say, and this isn't to, you know, deter someone from doing this type of work, but like, I didn't have any experience in medical device.
Yep.
Like it was one of those things where, you know, I felt like I was older. I was 33 at the time. And, you know, even just getting to an interview, it's like, well, do you have 1 to 2 years of medical device experience? I'm like, well, I don't have any.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even getting looked at for a lot of things. So I really used my network
Yep.
to get in contact with certain people. And that's really kind of what got me to where I'm at and got me some of these interviews. Because really they were looking, you know, it might say entry-level position, but it still will say 1 to 2 years of medical device.
Yep.
They're kind of like, well, how does someone who doesn't have any experience in the first place even break in?
Yep.
And that was kind of the thing. But it took time and it worked out. So,
yeah. I always tell people every time it's a roller coaster.
Yes.
You know, like you said, there's the day where it's like they haven't talked to you in 10 days. You're like, I didn't get the job, and you're down in the slumps, and then they text you, hey, second round, you're back up.
Right.
You know, so like that's the process. And the thing I really, again, want you guys to hear as listeners is going back to that network. You know, like we beat it to death, and everyone thinks they're just going to apply and the resume is going to get you hired. And very, very seldom does that happen. It's what you know or who you know is going to get you hired. And so that's why we always touch on it.
And that's the thing too. And I think having my own business for 7 years, I get to see a different side of the medical device business. Like I understand kind of how it works. And your gym example was a perfect example of it. You know, and I think I have kind of that life experience.
Yep.
And certain companies don't care about that. They just want someone that's going to hustle around and do whatever. And, you know, so it works where I'm at now. It kind of brings it all together, and it's still kind of like what I'm doing or what I was doing. I'm doing it now. It's just a different modality.
Exactly. 100%.
So, you know, you still got to network, you still got to meet people, you got to
sell,
you got to follow up. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just a different modality. And I do feel that my experience in the past has allowed me to get to that point.
Yep. So. And I think that's a great point too, is just to touch on, you know, being able to run the business. You know, when I went through a lot of interviews, you're running a business as you're doing this. You know, you're doing a salesperson, but you're all running your business, and you might be with a company, but it's at the end of the day, it's you. You're the one selling yourself.
Your face, it's your relationships that you're building, and it's your bottom line. You know, yes, you need to get paid, but you're also working for the company, so they get paid too. So it's important.
Yep. And I state that for everybody out there, because again, the amount of times I got told I need to go work at ADP, I need to go sell copiers, I need to do that. Like that just wasn't for me. And like doing personal training, being able to be like, hey, I already sold a service, which again, they don't consider sales, but like I would almost argue that you're trying to make someone pay you to do all the work. Correct. It's almost the hardest sell. Right. You know what I mean? So being able to take that.
Yeah. I mean, my previous career prior to owning a gym, I was going door to door doing investments. So I did have that sales aspect of it. You know, they asked me a little bit about that when I was going through some interview processes, but I really think it just comes down to, you know, all the interview candidates that people are interviewing, they just want to see if you're competent and if they like you.
Yep, 100%.
That really is what it comes down to, because everyone's resume is going to look, you know, I don't want to say inflated, but everyone's resume is going to look good. You know, they want it to look good. And everyone, you know, if you're an athlete, not everyone an athlete, but if you're an athlete, you know, it doesn't matter what sport you played, you want to claim, well, I'm an athlete, I've done this. Well, everyone's technically an athlete, or everyone's got some sort of competitive thing on the resume that it's hard to separate yourself.
100%.
Whether it's basketball, football, or whatever. So really, it's just being competent. And I think I really try to sell the fact that, you know, going into the field, I didn't know anything. And I'm not trying to say, well, I know everything about medical device, but I'm a quick learner. I understand you know, responsibility. I'm good at following through, and it's really important to me to know my products and know what I'm trying to do so that I can present it to doctors or coworkers or whatever and have an understanding. And I can learn that quickly is really what you got to try to sell, because you're going to learn, 99% of your job is going to be on the job training.
100%.
And if you can pick things up quick and you can, even learn outside, start studying and doing different things, it will speed up the process of your knowledge and everything. So 100%. I think that's extremely important as well.
I love that. And just touching on that, going into be like, I think I said that in every single interview because in the interview process, they're going to find a weakness.
Sure.
And then they're going to just stay on it. Yep. And they want to see how you go and how you get pressure and how you handle yourself. And that was always it. Hey, you don't have OR experience. Okay. I've never been in medical device. Right. But then you're just seeing, hey, I'm a fast learner. I'm adaptable. I'm going to do it. And like so many managers I've talked to, especially in the associate role, it's like, I just want a self-starter that I don't have to hold their hand, that's going to be willing to learn and do all the work themselves, and also going to follow through, like you said, going to show up to the cases, not going to mess up the trays when they're there, just simple.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you said, you have no OR experience. It's like, it doesn't take like a rocket scientist to figure out.
Either did you at one point.
Right.
That's what I would say to the manager.
Right. Like someone, you start somewhere, but it's not like it's not like you got to be a genius to be in an operating room. Like you guys, once you eventually get into it, like it's not this complicated thing. I mean, there's certain rules and restrictions, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it's just one of those things where it's not like, don't be afraid that you don't know, because you really don't, and it's really not all that scary.
Exactly. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And I think saying that and expressing that in an interview actually shows that you're more competent than not. Going into it saying you know everything is not, obviously the good way of doing it either. So
I love that. I love that. And then so going into our next question, we already talked really about life of distributorship going into that. But I'd love to hear kind of like your first year. You've been in 1 year, just kind of the experience. And then also the thing I like to touch on is what you thought it was going to be like, and then what the reality was. Because that's what I'm learning. I tell everybody is, I thought it was going to be something else. Everyone told me drinking from a fire hose. Didn't understand that till I was actually in.
It's all on the job.
I
when I first got hired, before I even went into the OR, it just so happened like one of our like trainings in so I kind of work on two different things of the body, we'll say, but one of the trainings was on one of the parts, and so I flew out to where it was. I spent a whole week, with other people that were new as well, from different distributorships. So it was funny because like I've never been in an OR, so what the hell do I even know? Like they're going through all these different things, and it's like, well, I've never seen a patient on the bed. I don't know where the incision's gonna, like, there's just all these different things where it's like throwing me into that made no sense. But I did learn some things, but for me, I have to apply it. It has to be like, I have to see it. And once you kind of see it, and once you can kind of conceptualize what's going on, things become easier. And it's just like, because we talked about gym stuff, like it's just like working out. Like just the more that you do it, after 3 months, the easier it is. The more particular cases that you have, the easier it's going to be when you go in for the 14th case than it was of the second case. So, so really, for the first 3 months, he was trying, a lot of it was navigating the hospitals, figuring out where I'm going, what system I'm trying to use to check in, what hallways do I got to go down? And then in the back of your mind, then you got to have, what stuff do I need to bring? Because we bring some implants that obviously aren't having to go through sterilization and things of that sort. So we have implants. We have different systems that the doctors might use. So we have different trays checked in. We got different, like I said, implants. So you got to bring that the day of. And then it's, just a matter of when you're in the OR, getting a feel for the doctors, understanding kind of the OR etiquette, and different hospitals have kind of different things going on. So it's just one of those things where it's just the more that you do it, the easier that it goes. And then further, with different surgeons, you might read, kind of the surgery technique guide, and one surgeon's going to do something differently than the other surgeon. So it's kind of taking notes on what this guy likes versus what this guy likes. And so you start kind of, you're on your phone taking notes of different things. So you're kind of learning the preferences of the surgeon. And as time goes on, you just get more comfortable and what he's going to use, when, you know, he's going to use it, things of that sort. So that you can be there to help the scrub and make sure that you add some value, obviously, to the surgery. And that takes a little bit of time, and it takes a little bit of confidence to be able to, you know, kind of speak up and start to learn your products. Yeah. And then I kind of mentioned already, you know, when you go home, you know, that's where you can start to go back to the surgical technique, see how he did certain things, learn a few things there, watch a few videos. I'm sure whatever company has different training modules, like you can start to kind of learn more, and it makes sense versus reading a book. And like, I remember when I was first in it, I'm reading the surgical technique guides. I'm like, I have no idea what this even means. Yep. Like, you're talking about diameters and, you know, millimeters and different things of that sort. I'm like, well, I don't even know what that means and how it's even applied, where it's going to go. Like, you just have no clue. And then having to learn different systems, because, you know, you might do something, or a doctor might want this particular system and he might want this one, and you don't know which one he's going to use once you get to the case because he hasn't figured it out yet. So now all of a sudden, so it's like you're learning multiple things, and it's just experience. But now that I, you know, understand better now, you know, there's still days where things can kind of go, you know, haywire, but at the end of the day, you know, I feel much more confident in what I'm doing, and it just takes time.
That's awesome. And that's what I've been told, the same thing. You know, I tell everybody, my coworker that I was working with, they told me like the first 6 months they felt sick to their stomach going in, because it's just like you're so nervous. You want everything to go great.
I would say probably 6 to 9 months. You know, and it was always like, you know, I would do something, and then like afterwards or whatever, I'd call my boss and we'd have conversation. Like, you kind of go over things, and it all makes sense then why you did what you did at the beginning. You know, once you're done with it, you're like, okay, that now makes sense. So now next time that happens, it makes sense on why I'm doing it. Like, and you can be more comfortable in what you're trying to do. It's really, I don't know, it's hard to explain, you know, being in the position where we're at now to someone who's a newbie, because
you're just not going to know until you do it.
You're just not going to know until you do it. And that, I know that that's kind of like a horrible answer to get the listeners, but it's, you know, kind of frustrating, but that's just the nature of the business. And once you're in it for a couple of years, you know, you can kind of go whatever direction from there.
And like you said, I think the best thing you said is the experience, because you're not going to see things unless you see them. And then, like I always tell people, if you mess up and you get yelled at or whatever it is, you don't mess up again, because you remember, 100%. You know, so like that's
yeah, we've had some situations, you know, where I've messed up. A lot of it is just kind of learning the lingo.
100%.
You know, it's like it's a foreign language to a certain extent when you start getting into it. You might know the body and everything, but now there's a lot more. I mean, there's things that these surgeons have gone through for, you know, years on years on years, and you're trying to learn it in 3 months, you know, like, or 6 months. And the lingo was really the hardest thing. I think, you know, for me, I watched a handful of like YouTube videos on certain things, and just being in the OR and just kind of listening to different things and listening to other reps and talking to other reps and stuff. And I've been fortunate, you know, some of the other reps that have been in cases that I'm in, you know, I'll ask them, you know, different questions on their product or on their thing, and you know, they kind of will explain things, and it just makes sense then when you're watching what's going on and all that. So, and then it indirectly comes back and helps you, because you're probably going to be doing the same thing 100%. Sometime, you know, in the future and everything. So talking to other reps and really kind of just being a sponge and listening and taking things in and taking notes.
I love it.
Been big.
Yeah, that's huge. Like, just, and like you said, being able to learn, being always willing to learn, because like we talked about, but every day is a learning opportunity.
You have to. Yeah. I mean, you have to.
No two cases are the same.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
You hope they all go. The majority of the time they do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, these doctors are really good
at what they do. Yeah.
At what they do. And there's always, I'm going to say this, like, there's always ways out of things, if that makes sense. Like, you know, there's certain times where things can get a little, you know, dicey, but they've seen so many and they've done so many that there's always things that you can do.
Yep. And then just going into the last one for the listeners, advice. You know, that's what everyone's trying to break in. What would you say to someone who's listening, trying to break in?
Do as many interviews as possible is really the biggest thing. And I'm more, I don't know, I'm more of a realist on stuff. Like, I hate the interviews where it's like, tell me about a time where you struggled. You know, it's like, I remember for, you know, owning a gym and even my previous job, I had to interview people, and it's like, I don't want to cookie cutter question, cookie cutter answer, but that's what you have to do. And I hate that so much. Like, I just want to talk to you like a normal human being, you know, like, tell me about your life. Tell me some things that, you know, that you like or enjoy. Tell me some things you don't like, you know, tell me, you know, even like you played sports, tell me about your experience, you know, things like that. I don't need to know like tell me about a difficult time when you were challenged and you were about to give up. You know, those questions I'm not a huge fan of. But you have to go through that. Like I said, I had 3 or 4 different companies that I went through, different interview processes. And I did a lot of research. You go on different forums too. If you dig into the internet, you can find some stuff that can give you insight on the company, you know, that you're applying for. Let me think. I had another through another connection of my aunt, another friend of hers I was able to connect with, and he helped me a lot through some of the interview processes with one company. And that was just a random network of, hey, I know this person's working for that company. Let me reach out. So really it's all that kind of stuff. And then getting a feel for, you know, he kind of informed me on kind of what the culture's like and how you're supposed to answer things and say things, you know, and so that kind of helped going through that process. But you have to reach out to people. You have to be persistent. Jobs are coming up all the time. You know, when I was on the site, I would be on, you know, probably 4 or 5 different medical device company sites, and you'd see what would pop up. So just, you know, for someone who's out there, there's always going to be entry-level jobs popping up. Obviously, if you have some sort of sales experience, that will go a little bit farther than not. But if you don't have it, don't be discouraged. I know people that have been teachers that have gone into medical device, and they're very good at it, because that's a huge part of it. I do know some people, and just take it for what it's worth, that have gone to medical device school and have good experiences from that. And you know, people that I've gone through training with went to medical device. Some of them had gone through medical device school. That can give you a leg up 100%. You know, the hard part about medical device school is you might learn a lot of different modalities, and then you get hired on as one. So it can kind of seem like you did all this stuff for just one thing. But I wish I had that background, to be honest with you. It would have been very beneficial if I had 6 months of medical device school to devote to all the different, you know, avenues of medical device and the biologics and things of that sort.
And I think it just would, like you talking, just a better understanding. You know, we had the last guest we had, she graduated from it, so we picked her brain 100%. About it. But it was just having that understanding. My always thing is everyone told me I should go to that, and I was like, I'll just reach out to 3,000 people, and have them tell me.
I never went to it, and I, you know, I don't want to say glad I did. I broke in, you know, but like, I mean, they have cadavers and stuff, and you're doing things like that would have been super valuable for me to see that kind of stuff, and have a better understanding of it. So that's an option, a path if, you know, you want to go down that path. So there's just not a right or wrong way.
No, exactly.
But you have to reach out to people, whether that's through LinkedIn, whether that's through your network. It doesn't matter if the person's in extremity orthopedics. Talk to them about the business. It doesn't matter if someone's doing spine, talk to them about the business, or if someone's doing, you know, I don't even know what other.
There's so many. Well, that's the thing.
So many different avenues. And you know, you'll get a better understanding, you know, of the companies that you're going to be interviewing with and things of that sort. So it's a process. It takes time, but there are plenty of jobs out there. I know, especially with the coronavirus and stuff. You know, some people probably have quit or been let go. Companies will reevaluate, and they're still going to need, you know, people to do work. So they'll be hiring. But no, I love that. And that's what we just talked about here too. Always reaching out, using your network. And this is just something that just hit me because I've had a couple people reach out. They're like, hey, I have an interview coming up with this company in this division. What should I do? And my comment is always reach out to a person in that division, maybe in another part of the country. So I did that.
And that's what I did all the time.
So a couple different times. So I don't know what each company has kind of their own. Some might be like an associate rep. Some might be
they all have different names.
What I'm trying to say, but find out what so let's just say it was XYZ company has an associate rep. Find out who is an associate rep. Might pop up on LinkedIn that they're in North Carolina. Reach out to that person and say, hey, I saw that you've been with XYZ company for 5 months. What was your experience going through the interview process, and do you like the job and things of that sort, because I have an interview coming up or whatever. They might respond, they might not.
That's why it's a numbers game.
Yeah, it might be short and sweet. It might be, hey, this is what you need to do. But, you know, some people have given good advice where they're just like, hey, this is what they're going to kind of ask you, certain things like this, and just make sure you're prepared for that. But really, a lot of the questions are all going to be the same.
Yep.
And a lot of it is going to be, you know, for me, I always hated, I had to do one interview process where I had to do this whole, they made me do, is it the Wonderlic test?
What's that one?
That, I think that's what the NFL guys have to take.
Oh, really?
So you get, I don't know, I can't remember if it was like 10 minutes, but you got to answer like 50 questions as quick as you can. But it kind of challenges you, like, do you try to just go quick and move through it to get as many questions as you can, or do you want to try to get them right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, I got to question 27 or something like that, and I'm like, that's pretty good. I never got it. They said they're moving on or something like that. And you're kind of like, really? Come on. Like, you know, I thought I answered these questions good, but, like, so some of those are going to give you personality tests. And, you know, that's a tough way of doing it, too, because, you know, I'm more of a people person, I think.
Yeah,
I've always have been, and, you know, from an educational standpoint, even when I was going through college, man, I was just trying to study the night before the test and trying to just get a B or C on the test. Like, I really wasn't trying to get an A. But
C's get degrees, baby.
Right, but it's the job is so much of a personality test. Like you know, you get down with a case and you got some downtime, and I'm in the, you know, cafeteria, and every Wednesday it's with the doctor. You know, we're sitting down shooting the shit about stuff, and you know, the doctor's got to like you is really what it comes down to. I just had a baby girl, and another doctor that I cover a lot of. He has 2 kids and a baby boy now that's a month older than my girl, so we always talk about kids. You know, and it's like every time you ask, like, what's going on, and same thing. And he's also, you know, I saw him at the driving range, and we start talking golf, and like we were going to try to go, you know, golf a quick 9, because having a kid and trying to golf 18 holes is tough. But like, you have a lot of time, and even in the OR, I mean, it depends. I've had good doctors and bad doctors where some are nice in the OR, some aren't. But like, you know, it's chill. You got music playing, you know, everyone's in a pretty good mood. You know, there's certain times where you can talk a little bit more about, you know, pop culture and stuff that's going on, and you know, they want someone that's in the room that they want to be friends with and like, you know, and I'll never forget this one doctor too that, you know, I call on, and he just wants a buddy in the room, you know, where it's talking Lakers and talking sports and things of that sort. And that's what they're looking for. It's a relationship business, you know, and that's, if you have, you know, a 4.0 GPA and you have all these things, and same in the training world, like you know all this stuff about the body, but you can't communicate it.
Can't coach a person.
You can't coach a person, or you can't, you know, talk to them like a normal human being. You're not a great trainer. Or so, and I've been in a room where a rep talks so much where you're just kind of like, man, this guy needs to shut up, and he's driving the doctor nuts. Like, you can see it, you know. So it really is a personality thing, and they're, you know, some companies obviously have what they're looking for and everything, but I just think that if you can connect with, you know, individuals and connect with the nursing staff, and you're polite and you do what you need to do, and you do a good job, like, that will carry itself. And doctors recognize that, and you know, things can change. We were talking about earlier on the drop of a hat, and you know, you never know where you're going to be in 2, 3, 5 years from now, but it's so important to build the relationships, and that's what it is. And I even say, for me, interviewing with companies, I have some good relationships with, I see a guy I interviewed with almost every week that I didn't get a job with, that, you know, if anything ever happened, I bet you I could reconnect with him and see what's up. And now that I've got a year experience, and eventually, you know, down the road, 2, 3, 4, it allows you then to have, you know, more opportunities in the field, whether it's in the same, you know, avenue I'm at now, or if it's something different. But it's allowing you to network with different reps and different companies and different people, to where, if you're nice and you're likable, you'll have opportunities, you know, where if you're that person that people don't want to be around, and shit hits the fan, and now all of a sudden no one really wants to be around you, like, you're kind of screwed. So that's kind of what I would say.
No, and that's a great point. And like we just talked about, that's just general life. You want to be around 100%. People you enjoy. And and I tell that to people, like, there's a lot of miserable people out there, you know? So like, if you can be that light in the room, or just someone who even gives knowledge, or what it is, you know, there's a place for you.
And probably the last thing I just want to touch on real quick. I don't know if you really went into kind of the day-to-day, what it's like. I'm sure you've had other guests on here that kind of talk more day-to-day. The one big concern that I had when I first got into medical, or at least when I was looking to get into medical devices, I didn't want to have a job where it was like a 9 to 5. I had a job right when I got out of college. I was working for Wells Fargo Financial, and it was a Monday through Friday, and it was from 9 to 6, and then Friday you got out like 5 or something like that. But you were in the office. You had to, at noon, you had a break for an hour, and then you had to clock back in. And it was one of those things where I did that for 6 months right out of college, and I was just like, I can't do this. Like, it was miserable. Like, you lived for the weekends, and you dreaded on Sunday night what Monday was going to be. So then I ended up leaving that job, and I was a financial advisor, which the way my position was, it was far more flexible than that. It kind of taught me that autonomy of running your own business. Because really, as a financial advisor, it's the same concept, just a different modality. The more money you bring in, assets under management, the more money you're going to make and whatnot. So it's a big time sales position, but you're not necessarily always in an office. Like, you're having to network and do different things. Having a gym, same thing. You're out and about, you're meeting people, trying to bring new people in, you're in a gym, you're seeing people on a daily basis, very relationship business. So the nice thing about medical device is that you have the ability to kind of go different places. Like, you're going to different hospitals. So you're not confined to a desk. Now, for me, the way that my job is structured, usually we find out our cases are Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for the following week. So then I'm able to see on my calendar what everything looks like for the next week. So then that allows us to prepare of how we need to get everything. So like a logistics thing, how can we get everything to where it needs to be? So we'll have to communicate together as a team, like, hey, this guy's got 2 surgeries up here. We got to make sure that this stuff is there. Where are they right now? Let's grab them, move them, because you're moving what are called trays. And these trays have all your instruments that have to go through sterile processing. They got to get wrapped. They got to get used. Once they're done, they got to get cleaned and washed.
And if they're not in there, like if it wasn't in there and you go into the surgery, you can't just go grab one and do it.
Correct. So yes, that brings a point. Like, a lot of the stuff that when I check something in, I'm taking pictures of everything for my own. At 8 o'clock at night, want to make sure that, you know, the screwdriver's in there with the right screws. Got a picture. I feel comfortable. I can go to bed. Then you got to rely on the hospital, obviously, being able to not lose that or anything like that. But it gets sterilized, gets wrapped. You get to the hospital, open it all up, get everything on the mail stand. They use it. Then they got to obviously, you know, clean it, make sure that it's all no blood, no anything like that. They clean that. Then you got to go grab everything.
And make sure it's still in there.
It's all there, to make sure that they didn't put any of the, once again, the drivers or the screws somewhere else, or if the hospital took them.
Which does happen, just so you know.
Often. That's why you take pictures, because then you can say, this is everything that was checked in. I want to make sure that it's all looking the same when you bring it up. You take it, then he might be at one hospital for that day. Now we got to take it to another hospital because you have X amount of trays in your possession, and these hospitals don't hold your trays. The majority of them don't. Certain ones they're not going to. So you're constantly having to run trays. So a lot of the job is very logistical. You're moving around to different hospitals, checking different things in, using it for the cases, making sure that everything's back to where it is, and then taking it to the next place. So you're out and about, which to me is actually important. So some people that might not be that big of a deal, but you know, it is nice to where I can drive and I can grab lunch, or I can stop at home. You know, I can do different things. Like, there's, for the most part, there's not this super time crunch. Now, obviously, there might be if you got to turn something the next day, or if there's certain things, but there's a little bit of flexibility in that. And then we make sure everything pretty much for the next week is all set. Now, sometimes it can't be for the later part of the week, but for the most part, you can get Monday, Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday set the way that it needs to be. And then on Monday and Tuesday, you can kind of make sure you can finish off the week on whatever, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So part of the job, part of the job is logistical. Then the other part is spending the time in the OR. With, you know, to be completely truthful, it's a lot of hurry up and wait. You know, you might have a case that's at 7 o'clock in the morning. You get to the hospital at 6:15, 6:30. You go in, you make sure that your stuff's all set up, but the patient might be delayed, or something might be going on where they, you know, are late, or the surgeon comes a little bit late. So your case might not start till 8 o'clock. So you got there at 6:15, you did your part for 5 minutes, and now you're just sitting at the hospital. You know, so then you do your case. It could go, let's just say it's supposed to be an hour. It could go an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes because something took longer. Or they're having issues in the surgery. Then they got to basically, as soon as they close up the wound and get done what they need to, they got to take the patient out, and they got to, you know, disinfect the room, clean the room. And then you got to prep because you got the next case. So if you have the second case, you got to make sure your trays are there, make sure everything's set up, and then you have to wait again. So your days now, a surgery might be at 7 o'clock and it might be at 9:30, but now all of a sudden it's 11:15 and you haven't started your second case. So your days, you can see how they can start to get later and later. You might have a case that's at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I can already tell you if that's the case, you can probably plan on it being a little bit later because there's other doctors that are earlier that are now pushing that back. So you might have a case that doesn't get done till 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. It just depends. So it's, you know, a lot of it is an organizational thing. And when we talk about being competent and being, you know, a quick learner and I don't want to say like a yes man, but like being like, yep, we got to get this done. We got to like working as a team. Like you're going to have those interactions where it's like, oh shit, we don't have this tray. Dave, we need you to run this quick because that has to be there for his surgery. And then you go run that. And then there might be another time where I'm saying like, oh crap, man, we didn't have this. I need you to go grab this because I'm in cases all day. You know what I'm 100%. Saying? So there has to be like this teamwork of, you know, getting things done and working together. That's when we stress, you know, being a part of a team and being a learner. So I do think sports can play a role because you've had to do teamwork 100% to be successful. And you know, being responsible then with all that. And then that shows, you know, if all your stuff is there and everything's clean and you're there early and you're getting stuff done and the surgeries go well, the doctors will start to recognize that and they'll feel comfortable with you're in the room, you know what you're doing and all that kind of stuff. So that's really kind of the day-to-day aspect of it. A lot of it is running trays, making sure everything's legit and set up. And then a lot of it is the case coverage and being with the doctors and the nurses and stuff. So
I love that, man. That's so good. And thanks for going into detail because we really haven't someone to go into that deep of detail of like, you know, like you said.
With that said, that's my situation.
100%.
Someone else, you know, that you might have, ask them a question, it might be something completely different. You know, and you know, some people might not like having to drive around all the time and doing, you know, dealing with hospitals. Hospitals aren't the easiest to work with, especially checking things in. There's always a process. Every hospital has different processes. And, you know, it can be one of those things where it's very just kind of monotonous and boring and all that. But trust me, I don't mind driving, listening to Joe Rogan podcasts, you know, calling my parents or whoever, you know, getting to the hospital, making sure everything's good. And then going on and doing the next thing. Because I have been in the 9 to 6 grind where you're sitting in an office and it's 1 o'clock and you look at the clock and you got another 5 hours and it goes slow. You know, so that's just my experience from it. I think everyone's got different experiences in what their day-to-day is like. But for the most part, when you're breaking in, you're running a lot of trays. And that's what we mean by that is you're going from hospital to hospital, checking things in, making sure things are accurate so that when the case happens, everything's there. Is there. So,
man, that's awesome. Dave, thank you so much for being on the podcast, man. I appreciate you. And if you guys haven't, if you're watching, please press that like and subscribe button. It helps us get out to more people just to help them. And if you're listening on the podcast, please rate us a 5-star and make a comment. Again, just trying to help as many people as we can. And then also, like I told you guys, have a big surprise coming. I've heard everybody they want help. I may put a product together. I'm just waiting for the final things and hopefully should have something out here for you guys that can help you guys break in. So thanks for everybody who's listening and I hope you guys have a great week. Peace.
Have a good one.